Hello, this is Sabah Musharraf from Favors and More, and in today's video I will be sharing 3 stamping techniques which are essential and play a very important role in adding texture to your project backgrounds. The 3 techniques that I will be discussing with you today are the full impression, faded impression, and partial impression. We begin by taking a stamp and ink. You can take any ink that is suitable for your project, and then we start stamping. Okay, so for a full impression you will be covering your stamp with ink, right? And you're really patting your stamp with ink, making sure that it covers your stamp entirely, and then you stamp. And you get a full impression. This technique is most useful when you want the stamped image to stand out and basically be the focal point. Now, to create a faded impression, we're going to swipe the ink pad over our stamp, right? So you aren't patting it down, you're just swiping it, right? Very gently, and then you stamp. So it creates a faded impression. This impression is the one that is used for creating backgrounds mostly, right? For adding texture to your background. Why? Because this is faded, and if you have a lot of elements on your project, or even if you have a few elements on the project, it doesn't look too busy, right? This blends into your project background, right? So an example of the faded impression, usage of the faded impression is here. I jelly printed this piece, and if you notice here, right, this is the same stamp, and this is an example of the faded background. Faded impression, sorry, this is an example of the faded impression, right? I hope you can see it. So you can see that this just blends into the background. Now the third technique, let me just write faded, right? The faded impression, right? Okay, now for the partial impression, what you're going to do is that you take your stamp off the acrylic block, right? And because you're creating a partial impression, meaning that you don't want the entire image stamped, you just want parts of it showing here and there. So you're just going to take your stamp and just press down in whichever areas you think the ink should be, right? And then you stamp it on your card stock or on your cardstock, right? And then you just press it down with your fingers. You don't need the acrylic block for this. And when you remove it, it's going to create a partial impression, right? So a partial impression is also used heavily when you're creating textures, right? And an example of a partial impression is this, right? The stamp I've used here is a different stamp set, but if you look closely, this is all partial stamping, right? So all this texture in the background, the one in black, has been created by partial stamping. So there is a little bit of the stamp there, but there is nothing overbearing, and it's blending into the background, right? So these are the 3 techniques which play a very important role when you're creating, when you're adding texture to your backgrounds. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below, and I will get back to you. Thank you.